I mean, podcasting, the power of podcasting for businesses is in growing trust. Really, it's in growing trust. It's in growing an audience that trust you, that know you. And it's in growing fans. It's in growing a fan base. You know, people who know your brand, they trust that you know what you're talking about, that you're worth working with. Not only that, there's a level above it where they actually become a fan of what you do. So they enjoy your work, they follow your work, they become an audience member in that they watch what you do, they listen to what you do, they read what you do, and they end up sharing what you do as well. And so they end up promoting your business for you.
Welcome to the Laws of Business podcast. Here, we will share the skills you need to make your business a success. Learn about goal setting, productivity, time management, marketing, and much more. Hear inspiring stories with today's best business leaders and join a hub of thousands of passionate entrepreneurs across the world. And now, here's your host, Jamil Jama.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Law of Business podcast. I'm your host, Jamil Jama, and I interview entrepreneurs. And today I'm going to be interviewing Colin Gray, and we're going to be talking about podcasting. And in this interview, before we start the questions, I'll just give you a bio of who Colin Gray is and what he does. Colin Gray is the founder, owner of the Podcast Host, and the Podcast Host helps you to become just that, a podcast host, the host of your own podcast, and to make sure your podcast achieves everything you need it to. The Podcast Host provides training, courses, and articles, all designed to grow your podcast, make it successful, and develop your podcasting skills. The Podcast Host takes you from novice podcaster to confident broadcaster in easy steps. And it's a real pleasure to welcome from Dundee in Scotland, Colin Gray. Colin, how's it going, Colin?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine as well, thank you. It's very cold outside. I don't know how what's the weather like in Scotland?
Well, it's good right now, actually. We've got a bit of blue sky outside. It's warming up a little bit, so maybe spring's on the way.
Yeah, it's freezing here. It's freezing in London, man. I thought Dundee was in Ireland for some reason, but when I looked it up, I found it in Scotland, so I was a bit surprised.
No, still in the same the same landmass as yourself. We're not over the sea.
That's great. So, Colin, first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to do this interview. I appreciate it so much. It's a real pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Always good to be asked.
I know you just discovered me the last couple, not discovered me. I know we just got in contact the last couple of months, I think, on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But I was aware of you for a couple of years, I think 1 year, because I saw you being interviewed on podcastwebsites.com. I saw you be interviewed. Was it? Podcast websites. That's where I saw you being interviewed.
Yeah, I love the stuff that Mark and Ramona do over there. So yeah, quite close to the podcast websites team. Yeah,
so it's a pleasure to finally meet you, man.
Indeed, you too.
Awesome. So, Colin, before we start the interview, I'd just like to start with a quote by Walt Disney. Walt Disney says this: "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." And I'd just like to ask you, when did you begin your journey as an entrepreneur and as a podcast host?
My entrepreneur journey started way before the podcasting, actually. I basically got into running my own business through lack of any other option back in the day. I got out of working in bars and just sort of random hospitality jobs and started doing web design because I went and studied web design at university. I did it as a kind of follow-up course because my first choice, which was physics, didn't really work out. It was pretty dull. So I changed that course, ended up doing a master's in web design. And basically, it's pretty hard to get a job as a web designer, turns out, because you kind of need the experience to get into it, but it's hard to get that experience in the first place. So I thought freelancing, that was the way to go, being self-employed. So I quite enjoyed doing that. I did that for a couple of years. But in the end, really, when you're trying to get in without having all the contacts and stuff, when you've not done the job properly with an agency and everything, then it's quite hard to get the work. So I ended up taking on some work as an educator to help my to pay the bills, basically. And it was in the university that I got a job in that I started to get into podcasting, because podcasting was the kind of fashionable way to teach people at the time. So I got asked to look into podcasting to help the lecturers learn how to use podcasting as a teaching tool. So I ended up kind of combining the two skills and doing both, actually, because I ended up creating websites to run our podcast from, because I knew both sides. And that kind of created this little niche for me, I suppose, where I was helping lecturers to get started in podcasting and helping them get that web space set up to put it out on as well. So I kind of, I made this little area for myself to work in. And that was how I got started in podcasting. And I ended up coming back out of the university, going back into the kind of entrepreneurial life, because I started The Podcast Host. So that's the website I run just now. I started that at the university, came out of university to run that full time, just because it started to do well. Over the 3 or 4 years that I was in the uni, it started to gain traffic. It started to do well because of all the articles, the interviews, the reviews of what equipment that I was writing. And really that gave me my kickstart, just the advertising, the affiliate income. And then from there, started the business around it, where now we do coaching, we do services, we develop apps to help podcasters and all the rest. So there's a potted history, I suppose.
Well, congratulations there, Colin.
Thank you.
I've heard that plenty of times where the reason why people became entrepreneurs or started their own business was because they couldn't get a job. So they had to find a way to make money to provide for themselves and their family.
Yes, we're not failures, are we? It was a route to success.
Yeah. It's like Robert Kiyosaki says, the C students were similar. A students work for C students. Similar to that.
Right.
Basically, the people who get C's, the people who get A's, the smart ones, end up working for the ones who get C's, who are not as smart as them.
Well, you always need both.
Definitely. And so, Colin, podcasting can be used for many things, such as news, politics, sports, and other forms of entertainment. How can podcasting be used to grow a business? Because podcasting can also be used for business, obviously, but how can it be used to grow a business?
Yeah. I mean, podcasting, the power of podcasting for businesses is in growing trust. Really, it's in growing trust. It's in growing an audience that trust you, that know you. And it's in growing fans. It's in growing a fan base. You know, people who know your brand, they trust that you know what you're talking about, that you're worth working with. But not only that, there's a level above it where they actually become a fan of what you do. So they enjoy your work, they follow your work, they become an audience member in that they watch what you do, they listen to what you do, they read what you do, and they end up sharing what you do as well. And so they end up promoting your business for you. Really, that's the two levels for me. And it works in that people are generally attracted into first coming across a business by, text search, the Google searches. So search for us, it's like, what's the best podcast microphone, for example. And quite a lot of people find our website by typing that into Google. That'll be their first contact with us. And they'll be like, oh, it seems to know what he's talking about, but it's hard to get personality across. It's hard to build trust. It's hard to really build that engagement with simple text. So what we do is we try and direct people then towards either a video or straight to the podcast. A video is usually an easier sell because it only takes a minute or two to watch a video. So we can get them to watch a short video. That starts building some personality. So they start to see who I am or Matthew is or someone else on the team. And so they go, oh, I kind of like these guys as well. Or they hate them, they hate us, and they leave. But presuming they like us, we might be able to talk them then into listen to the podcast. And the thing with podcasting is that you can really get that personality across so powerfully, because you've got people for, half an hour or an hour. Like we're going to be chatting here for about half an hour. So we have people listening to us for half an hour. They're getting to know us. It's not rushed like a video. There's no barriers like a video. It's just voices in your ears. It's quite intimate. It's quite personal. It helps you get to know that person. So that's real trust. That's real engagement. That's when, you get the real people behind your business out in front, and customers, potential customers, get to know you. They're like, you're no longer a faceless business, you're actual real people. And the multiplier there, just the final bit of this, is that attention makes such a difference, because it's half an hour long, you have somebody for an hour, and you're building that trust or that engagement or that likability every minute. Suddenly that just creates huge fans of your business. You don't get that long on a blog or a video. People disappear when they're listening to, watching a video or reading a blog. But with a podcast, you have them for so long that they just get to like you, to get to know you, to get to trust you, and they become fans of your work. That's how it helps a business. It's creating these people that buy what you do, help you promote your business, and just become loyal fans of your work.
Definitely. I definitely agree, Colin. It's definitely personal because we're literally in people's ears, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's so many people come up to me at conferences and events and stuff like that and say like, oh, I just feel like I know you. They'd speak to you as if they're a friend because it's so intimate. You're speaking to somebody straight into their brain.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, people can definitely get to know, like, and trust you. But with so many podcasts out now, do you think podcasting is saturated now?
It's certainly getting busier, but it's definitely not saturated. I mean, compared to the amount of blogs out there, like if you're trying to compete in the blog space at the moment, it's very, very difficult. That's a saturated space with tens or hundreds of millions out there.
I think even YouTube is very difficult to compete.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. The trouble with podcasting is there's much less competition. So if you search for any random topic out there, for example, I run a mountain biking podcast because that's one of my hobbies. So I love talking about mountain biking. So I run a show on that, and you'd imagine that would be a saturated topic. It's a popular sport. There's tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people out there that do mountain biking. You search for mountain biking on the web and you get tons of blogs, tons of websites talking about it. But I'm one of the only podcasts that talk about that. It's strange. There's topics out there that still have very few podcasts talking about them. So it's cool that you can get there. There's loads of spaces out there. The only trouble we have is that, because of that attention thing I was talking about earlier on, we've got, it takes an hour to listen to a podcast. So there's less podcasts. People might read 100 blogs in a month, but they might only listen to, 15, 20 podcasts. So there's a kind of balance there in that it's not saturated. You can get found quite easily, I think, because people search for your topic, but then they'll only listen to 2 or 3 shows on that topic, possibly. So you need to stand out and quick.
So podcasting is not saturated, but it's getting there. Is that what you meant?
It's not saturated, but it's what? Sorry.
It's getting there. Like it's heading towards that.
It's becoming more busy, certainly. Yeah, it's not as easy as it was, a year or 2 years back.
Okay, so it's becoming more busy. So there's still many podcasts out there.
Oh yeah. I think last time I saw the stats, it was somewhere around 500,000.
I was going to ask you that how many podcasts is there worldwide? If you knew.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, that last time I looked. But I mean, it's hard to get stats on that, obviously, because it's the biggest directory out there is YouTube. iTunes, even Apple Podcasts and iTunes, and basically they don't release that kind of data. So
yeah, I was going to say because I googled to see which is the largest, to see how many podcasts there is, and I couldn't find an answer for that.
Yeah.
But there is many podcasts, and so Colin, since there is so many podcasts, how can a podcast show stand out from other shows?
I think there's a few ways. I mean, I think the old tired method of just doing interviews is tricky now. It's, I mean, people can make it work, and I'm sure you're making it work, Jamil. But I think a new podcaster coming into the space needs to think really hard before they just copy that same old approach. And you mentioned to me already that you do a bit of editing for this, so that's already a way of standing out in interviews, because there's so many shows out there that just, it's just a half-hour interview, an hour-long interview where there's absolutely no editing, there's no care put into the quality of the content. Even worse, the person that's doing the interview doesn't prepare very much. They just say, "Oh, I want to go into this with the same mindset as my audience. I don't know anything, and neither does my audience, so that means that will make for a good interview." To be honest, that's just lazy. People need to do preparation. They need to have questions. You sent through a set of questions before this, so you're doing it well. People can stand out by just putting a bit more work in, because there's a lot of shows out there that just don't do that prep, don't do that planning. They don't think ahead to actually get the best from their guests. So this is an interview show, because so many people get into that because they think it's easy. But interviewing is a skill. You really need to do so much work to get good at interviewing, to think about it, to draw out the stories to really engage people, and then to go in and actually hone that story afterwards. So take a half-hour interview and hone it down to 15 to 20 minutes, cut out just the highlights, just take the narrative, maybe rearrange it a little bit. And yeah, that's work. It takes time to do it. But like I say, it's becoming harder to stand out. So that work is necessary these days. So, I mean, that's one way, certainly, if you want to do the interview show method. But I mean, another way to stand out is actually just to not do that, because you'll be in the minority already if you don't interview people. If you do a solo show, you just speak for 5 or 10 minutes. People are looking for shorter, sharper episodes to listen to on, say, Amazon Alexa, Amazon Echo, or any of the smart speakers, or just for, just to fit in more, really. Or even just do a co-hosted show, so you get a bit more chemistry, a bit more banter between the hosts, or just experiment with different types of formats. That's what I would say to people. It's becoming harder, but with a bit of creativity, I think it's quite easy to stand out, really, because there's still, like we say, there's not that much competition out there. So, just do something a little bit different and you'll do well.
Definitely. So put in more effort as well. So there's a quote, success is dependent on effort.
Indeed. And a lot of people do not put much effort in on their podcasting. They just press record button, record it all, and then just publish that straight away. So yeah,
definitely.
No worries.
Sorry to interrupt you, Colin. You was going to say something?
No, that was all.
Yeah. I was gonna. It's a great advice you gave, Colin. I was gonna start not diversifying my podcast, but put in more things like book reviews for entrepreneurs, movie reviews for entrepreneurs, because there are some motivating movies out there. Mm-hmm. Movies also, they say you don't watch TV and stuff. Okay, we don't watch TV, but entrepreneurs don't watch TV really. But good movies like Steve Jobs, like the movie I watched recently about Steve Jobs, that motivated me to want to work harder and to be smarter as well.
Yeah. It's a good idea. It's
entrepreneur movies, entrepreneur biographies.
Yeah.
etc.
Magazine shows can work really well. Like if you do it's the feature of the week, which is
magazines as well. I was going to do that as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it can work really well.
So I'm gonna start doing things like that as well. So that's great advice you gave us, Colin. Thank you so much. So Colin, you have a course called Podcraft, Honing the Art of Podcasting, where you teach people how to podcast by covering one topic in depth. And most podcast hosts don't go in depth on one topic. They have a list of questions and they go from one question to the next. But you help podcast hosts to go in depth on one topic with your course, right?
Yeah, I mean, as part of our academy, one of the things that we encourage people to do, and it's what we do on Podcraft. So Podcraft is actually one of our podcasts, but you're right, it does have a set of courses within that podcast, because what we do is we do it in a seasons-based format, which is a bit different. This is another way you can possibly stand out, because it's a different approach to it. So on Podcraft, instead of, say, going from one topic to the next topic, changing level every single week, what we do is we pick a topic and do a whole season on that topic and go really in depth, sort of honing down to different parts of it on every episode. So to take an example, we did a season on monetization. So if you want to figure out how to monetize your podcast, then our season 5 of Podcraft is actually, it hones right in on that. And we've got, I think it's 6 or 7 episodes. One episode is all about sponsorship, so going really deep into how to do podcast sponsorship. One's on charity, like Patreon, donations, that type of stuff. Another on selling a product or a service, that type of thing. So really, it's one of the different methods that we teach to help people make podcasting easier, because seasons-based podcasting helps you with your planning, it helps you with your scheduling, it helps you with batching, it helps you take a break every now and again so you're not just running on that treadmill. But it also makes it better for the listener, because suddenly you're going much deeper on topics. You're actually linking episode to episode, so they're compelled to listen to this episode and the next one and the next one, because it builds. Each episode builds on the last. So it's one of the things that we teach, and one of the things that we do. I mean, all of our podcasts are seasons based because it works so well. So yeah, it's part of the teaching on Podcraft, and certainly in the Podcast Host Academy that we run as well.
That sounds like a great course, Colin. Thanks for making it. I heard Lewis Howes. I don't know if I want to listen to some of his episodes, maybe 10, not too many. Mm-hmm. But I've heard Lewis Howes is very good at going in depth on one topic. I've heard he's the best at that. That's what I've heard. I don't know if you listen to his podcast.
Yeah, I've listened to Lewis in the past. Definitely, he's a great presenter, does a great show, and yeah, I think he can hone in and stuff well.
So now he's gonna have competition because you're teaching him. You're teaching other podcasters to do what he does.
Well, it's more the seasons approach where you kind of spread out. You know, I think a big problem that a lot of podcasters have is that they don't go deep enough. They don't go, you know, they waste a topic on just one episode. So for example, that monetization thing, that could be a question. Somebody could write into us and say, how do I monetize a podcast? And we could go, right, okay, here's how to monetize a podcast. You can either do sponsorship. Here's a bit about sponsorship. You could do, you know, Patreon. Here's a bit about Patreon. Or you could sell a service. Here's a bit about services. Here's about products. You know, you could do, a lot of people do that. They go through everything on one episode and they kind of waste it all in that one episode. Whereas if they treat it as a season, you know, you split it down into 7 or 8 different episodes, suddenly you get so much more content. You serve your listener much more because you're giving much more value, and you make it much more effective for them and for you. So yeah, I think people could stand to concentrate much more and go much more deep.
Definitely. And Colin, I would love to go more in depth on this topic, but you're picking up your kids very soon, aren't you?
Indeed, yeah. Gotta run. It's the school run, I'm afraid.
So Colin, before you run, how can anybody contact you?
You can find me on thepodcasthost.com. That's our main site. And we've got a contact form on there, or my main social media is Twitter. Just see me at thepodcasthost on Twitter. You can send me any questions you have. And
you can be found on Instagram as well. That's where.
Yeah, definitely do a bit of Instagram. Yeah, certainly enjoy playing around on that. It's a bit more personal stuff on there than the work, but yeah, happy to chat.
That's great, Colin. Colin, I want to thank you again so much for taking your time out to do this interview. It was a great interview. I enjoyed it, and you gave a lot of valuable information. I appreciate that.
No, thanks again for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And I would like to thank all the listeners for tuning in and listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with someone that you think would benefit. Please also leave a comment in the comment section and also subscribe. I'm your host, Jamil Jama. This is the lawofbusiness.com, and that was Colin Gray. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Laws of Business podcast. Find out more about us on thelawsofbusiness.com. Thank you for being a part of our journey.